Hi everybody, thanks for joining me today. Sorry I couldn't do my normal live video today. A lot of stuff going on around here with my husband being on leave and a house full of puppy dogs that we're babysitting. But I wanted to come out to you guys today and talk to you guys about something that I find confusing a lot, so I'm hoping by talking it out with you guys it'll help me better to understand it for my exams. And today I'm hoping that if this works, I'll be able to share myself and my slides. So maybe eventually Facebook will catch up and allow us to do that as well. So what topic I'm going to be covering today is extinction versus punishment. I personally have struggled with distinguishing certain parts of punishment from extinction because they do seem so similar. Specifically things like planned ignoring, which I will get to later on in this video. So to go into things, I'd like to first to talk to you guys about what is extinction. And I'm going to minimize my screen so you guys can actually see everything that we're talking about. And then as I go through, I'll pop back in. So let's see how this turns out. All right. Extinction. So I've included a professional definition of extinction and a simple definition. This is just mostly to help myself, but if you guys are interested in knowing professional definitions of a lot of the terminology you'll hear me use, that is one reason to have it on here. So as you see, the professional definition is discontinuing a reinforcer or enforcement of a previously reinforced behavior. So what does that mean in simple terms? It means we're no longer reinforcing a behavior that we don't want to see. So this is to stop that particular behavior. So when we're using extinction, we need to remember a few things. I'm going to sound like a broken record because you guys hear me talk about functions of behavior a lot, and that's because it's very important. So most of the time before we start an extinction program or any program, a functional behavior assessment or FBA should be ran. We need to know the function of the behavior so that way we're putting the correct behavior and the reason it's being maintained on extinction. So I've listed out a few things on here to help out with that. So like for attention, so how you put attention seeking behaviors on extinction. Well, you don't give attention for that behavior anymore. And then there's a tangible. Tangible is an item, something you can hold in your hand, you eat, so on and so forth. So when you see that behavior and it's maintained by an item, we do not give that item at all for when that behavior is going on. Now, escape and extinction, most of the time you won't hear people using extinction with escape. But how you put escape maintain behaviors on extinction, so stopping those, is we're blocking the escape. We're not allowing the child to escape the demand. So what that would be is, let's say, let me grab something that's, I show you a card or a book. I said, okay, here you go. What does this say? And they try to smack it away from you. That is escape. They don't want to read it. So to put that on Extinction, we don't stop presenting it. Read the word. Read the word. And then you just keep doing that until they do it. There's also, I put on here, automatic reinforcement. So this one is very hard to put on Extinction because not very many things can compete with something that's automatically reinforcing. Things that are automatically reinforcing are behaviors that they feel good or you like them. So for me, it's chewing my nails. So how would you do that? You would block the consequences of the chewing of the nails, block the reinforcement. As I said, it's not very easy. I mean, you could put something on my nails to make me, oh, I don't want that. But it may not work. I personally would not use an Extinction program for something like an automatic reinforcer. So let me swap our screens a little bit. Woohoo! So punishment. So punishment is defined as occurs when a stimulus change immediately follows a response, and it decreases the future frequency of that behavior in a similar condition. So what does that mean? It means that something is added or removed from the environment that decreases the likelihood of that behavior in the future. So we've talked about reinforcement and we've talked about punishment in the past. And this is, again, is trying to decrease the behavior. So that's what we're going for, is a decrease in future behavior. Remember, it's not that current behavior that's happening. You don't want that to do. That has nothing to do with it. It has to do with the decrease of the future behavior. So let's get back out here because we've got a nice big old list of types of punishment. We seem to really like punishment as human beings. It seems to be one of those, let me fix it for everybody, one of those things that we tend to go to before we try anything else. So I wanted to start by listing off the negative punishment aspects. So a lot of negative punishment kind of falls under the timeout. I know most people use timeout in some way, shape, or form with their own children, or have with, say, if you're babysitting, you've probably attempted to use timeout in some way. The reason this is classified as negative punishment is because you're taking away something. Now, the difference between negative punishment and negative reinforcement is, while both are removing something, negative reinforcement is taking away an aversive stimulus, something we don't want, whereas negative punishment takes away something that we do want. So time out, we're taking away time from reinforcers. So you could use that as taking away a specific reinforcer. So that could be something like when you're grounded, you're grounded for this amount of time from, nowadays I guess it'd be the cell phone. For me, it used to be the landline. So you were grounded from the phone for a week. There's also things called timeout ribbons. Timeout ribbons are not necessarily a ribbon. It could be a badge or something that represents time in. So when you show appropriate behavior, you have that ribbon or badge and you're wearing it or displaying it. When inappropriate behaviors are occurring, that badge is taken away. There is contingent observation, which is when you put a child or somebody in timeout and they still can see the activity, but they can't participate. Exclusion timeout is when they're taken away from the activity and cannot see it or participate. Seclusion timeout is, say you send your child to a different room where they have access to no reinforcement. And the last one I put on here was planned ignoring. Planned ignoring is what was confusing me. So planned ignoring is we completely ignore the person. We pretend like they're not there while they're engaging in that behavior. So if the behavior that you are using planned ignoring for is, say, a tantrum, and that's just something I pulled off the top of my head, you're going to completely walk away, pretend like your child doesn't exist. You're ignoring the tantrum behavior. So once the behavior stops, or you have set for a certain amount of time when it comes to that behavior, you can re-engage with them. So that is what negative punishment looks like. Let's bring back up our screen so you guys can get a better view. And there's also positive punishment. Now again, as a reminder, because it helps me remember, negative and positive are not good and bad. They are simply math. You're taking away or you're adding something. So as you can see, it seems like there's a lot more positive punishment going on. And the last one I'm really not going to talk about a whole lot because it's honestly not something that is used on a regular basis. But probably the most used and most prevalent form of positive punishment is going to be reprimands. So when a child does something, no, you're reprimanding them for that. Don't do that. That's reprimand. You've added that punishment to the environment. Now, as with before, you need to make sure you know your subject, know your person. If giving them that attention actually makes the behavior increase, then you're actually having positive reinforcement and not positive punishment. Response blocking is pretty much just stopping the response from happening. Physical guidance is what it sounds like. You're physically guiding the person hand over hand, making them do it. So physical guidance is you're using your child's hand and helping them pick up things until it's all done. And the hope for that one is that they won't like you physically doing it for them. So it makes it aversive and they won't display that behavior of not tidying up themselves or doing what they were supposed to do. Contingent exercise is something like sending a child out to the hallway to do jumping jacks. You don't like, oh, you threw this tennis ball at somebody's face. Go outside and run 5 laps. Negative practice is when you don't want to see the behavior anymore, so you kind of, in a way, you have them do the same thing over and over again. The exact behavior that they did. So, example would be if your student stood up from the table and flipped it, then you would have them stand up, fix it, flip it again, and do it a certain amount of times. That could be fun for somebody, so be careful using that one. Overcorrection is another one, and that's broken down into a few different sections. Positive practice is where you say a child comes through the door and they're covered in mud and they don't wipe their feet. So they create a muddy mess. So what you do is that you have them go back outside, wipe their feet, come back in. Go back outside, wipe their feet, come back in. You're showing that positive, that practice that you want to see them do. You're having them do it over and over again. Restitutional overcorrection is a lot of, I know when I was growing up, I think that one was used quite a bit. So let's go back to the making of the mess, the muddy mess. You come in, your shoes are covered in mud, And mom sees you, it's like, okay, first you're going to wipe your feet. Then you're going to clean up the mud. And then you're going to sweep and mop the entire house. That is an example of restitutional overcorrection. You're making them do more in the hopes of not displaying that same behavior later on. So it's going to be something that's similar to the correct procedure, but more of it, a larger scale version of it. And simple correction is just doing a simple correction, having them wipe their feet and go back on. And the last one I have on here is contingent electric shock. So yeah, that sounds pretty crazy. But it has been used in the past as a positive punishment and it is proven to work, especially for life-threatening behaviors or chronic behaviors. So if you have, and this isn't used very often, guys, so don't worry about going to ABA and thinking they're going to hook your kid up to electrodes. That's not going to happen. So this is mostly used in clinic type of situation with severe patients. So people who hurt themselves to the point where if they continue, they could actually take their own life. So this is when the behavior is seen, electric shock is given to them to decrease the behavior. With any punishment procedure, there are ethical concerns. So if your school or your clinic or somewhere that your child goes to on a regular basis wants to implement a particular type of punishment procedure, make sure you give your consent and you talk to them before it happens. So this is a good reason to know the things that your child is learning at your ABA center or at speech therapy or wherever they're going, whether it's school or even at school. So being familiar with their programs. That way, if you see that they're running a punishment procedure and you didn't give consent for that, you can talk to them and make sure that you understand the procedure and that it's not going to cause more harm than good. So just keep that in mind, everybody. So using punishment is to decrease the future of behavior, as I stated before. So let me bring up the full screen again. So again, as you see, I put on here an FBA, a functional behavior assessment, should be completed prior to implementing a punishment procedure. You want to, again, know the function of the behavior because you could be punishing somebody for the wrong thing. If you're punishing a child because you think they want attention and it's actually escape, you could actually be doing more harm than good. So you have to know the purpose behind the behavior. And that can be accomplished with doing a functional behavior assessment. So when it comes to punishment as well, it is highly recommended that you don't don't dive into punishment. Start with other options like reinforcing other behaviors or that maybe are incompatible with that behavior. And if you guys are interested, I can also do a training session on, these are called differential reinforcement of incompatible behaviors and differential reinforcement of alternative behaviors. And there's also DRO, which is differential reinforcement of other behaviors. So if that would be something you guys are interested in, make sure you comment below the video and I will try to set that up for next week. But you can also, I would also recommend trying, if you can, an extinction procedure prior to doing punishment. If none of those are feasible and you have to go into that punishment procedure, make sure you keep a few things in mind. You want to have a plan. Don't punish all willy-nilly. Again, make sure you know that function. Punishment should be immediately following or as soon as possible to the behavior. Because let's say your child smacks their sibling and you wait too long and then they go do something else and then you punish the child. Well, maybe what they were doing after the smack was appropriate behavior, and you just confuse the child by punishing that behavior rather than the smacking behavior. So make sure that any punishment procedure, or in that case, any reinforcement or extinction procedure, is used immediately following behavior. And if it can't be, then tell the child, hey, as soon as whatever's over, this is what's happening. So, and then I would tell them why, because you did this, or because, so an example might be, again, so say your child hit your other child. We'll go with son hit your daughter. And you have something going on, your hands are covered in chicken or something like that, and you can't come guide them to wherever you need to. After I wash my hands, we're going to do this. So whatever punishment procedure or reinforcement procedure you have in place, again, I would say it depends on your child and the circumstance. But immediately after that, then you do the procedure. So let's see. I would also say let's start with negative punishment before you go into positive punishment, if that's possible. Negative punishment, many of the courses I'm taking, there's a hierarchy. There is of changing problem behaviors. So the hierarchy is that differential reinforcement that I was talking about previously, then extinction. Then we go into negative punishment and positive punishment. So that would be the hierarchy, 1, 2, 3, and 4. It is recommended that you start, if you're going into that third level, so that you're into punishment now, that you start with negative punishment to see if that changes that behavior. So start by taking something away or ignoring the person, things of that nature. And if that doesn't work, then maybe that's when we start talking about that positive punishment. I would highly recommend, before starting any type of punishment procedure, that if you have availability to talk to a behavior analyst, a teacher, a special education teacher specifically, or somebody else who works in the behavior field, and try to get their perspective on it and see what should be done. I would not recommend just starting a punishment procedure on your own unless honestly, I just wouldn't start one without a little bit of help. Also, when it comes to punishment, sometimes it feels like it can get personal, both for you and the child. Don't let it get personal. You don't have to scream. I know in my family, tempers are very short. And I'm not saying you're a bad person if you yell at your child, because everybody does it. Everybody's got that breaking point. I'm just simply stating that don't let it become personal, because if it becomes personal for the child, then they feel that you're punishing them rather than the behavior. And they need to know that there is a difference. The child is not bad. That is one thing that I really like to emphasize. It's the behavior that's inappropriate. So we want to punish the behavior, not the child. So don't make it personal. Stick to your plan. Stay calm. If you have to, take a deep breath and walk away. And like I said, you could tell them, when I come back, this is what's going to happen. If you know that if you don't walk away, it's going to become personal or become aggressive, then take that time and walk away. Also, make sure that you're reinforcing appropriate behavior. You also want to make sure, like, so with timeout and time in procedures, you want to make sure that the time in is full of reinforcement, full of fun, so that the child will want to stay in the reinforcing area, and that once they enter the punishment or the timeout, it's not fun anymore. They sit there, they have no access to anything fun, and it's boring, they don't like it. So, but once they get back into the time in, they have access to all these great things. So make sure that your time in is different than your time out. So you may not want to send your child to their room. If they've got just as much fun and toys in their bedroom as they do in your living room, is it really punishment? No, I mean, you're just giving them access to a different area, plus the added benefit of mommy and daddy not nagging them to do what they need to do. So just keep that in mind. And let's see. Now, in my classes, I took this actual graph from my ABA 2 class from Penn State World Campus. This is from my ABA 2, Lesson 6, Module 6, for decreasing behaviors using punishment procedures. So I'm going to show you guys this table because I absolutely love it. It totally helped me wrap my brain around the difference between extinction and punishment and response costs, which I apologize for not talking about response costs, but I'll show you with the tablet and the time in, time out. So this is that graph that I was talking about. So this goes into really great detail about the differences. So the one big thing between punishment and extinction is that reinforcer. So let's say let's pick one behavior. It doesn't matter. We're going to go with your child. There's an annoying noise that your child makes, and you want it to stop. And the reason it's happening is because you're giving the child attention by yelling at them, stop doing that. So you're thinking you're punishing the child by yelling at them to stop doing it, but you're actually reinforcing it. So what extinction would be they're making that noise and you don't give them the attention at all for that behavior. It's completely removed, never to be given back to that child for that behavior. A response cost would be something like if that child has a toy that they really like, so you take that away for a few minutes and then you give it back. So that would be something like a response cost. A timeout would be something where as you remove access from all reinforcement and you eventually give it back. So the difference with punishment and extinction is extinction, you will never get that reinforcer back for that behavior, whereas punishment, you'll get it back eventually after a set amount of time. Another difference is with extinction, the plan is to make behavior stop. And punishment is to decrease it. It doesn't necessarily make it stop. It kind of just, in a way, can put it on hold. That would be the best way I could explain it. You won't see it in those situations. So I really like this graph. I will make sure that in the video I also make the link available to my PowerPoint slides. If you guys are interested in that, that'll be there. So I really like that one. It helps me out. So I've also, as usual, I like to include things to keep in mind and remember. And I'll bring that up again. So things to remember. So extinction can present with what's called an extinction burst. So and now this is not 100% going to happen, but it's something to keep in mind. An extinction burst is a temporary increase in that behavior. So that would look like, so say we have this graph. So you're trying, when you first start that extinction procedure, there's a possibility that you see this behavior go up and then drop down. So that point would be the extinction burst. And then there's also something called spontaneous recovery. Spontaneous recovery is after the behavior has started to decrease and it's on the way out the door. You might, again, something just to keep in mind because it may or may not happen. You could see a slight increase of that behavior again, and then it's supposed to go back down. Now, one thing that you need to keep in mind with both extinction bursts and spontaneous recovery, if they do occur, do not give up on your procedure. Do not give in. Because if you do, what happens is the child or person learns that, oh, all I have to do is escalate that behavior to the point where I can break them, and then I'll get what I want. So if you give up, so you're up on that uphill climb for the extinction burst, and you give up at the point that is at its peak, then the next time you try to put that behavior on extinction, the peak's going to be even higher. So make sure that you don't stop, you don't give up. And an example of an extinction burst would be, my son had issues, and I think I've talked about this before, with generalizing going to the bathroom at new places, and even wouldn't go to the bathroom at ABA or school. And he would only go to the bathroom for me. So when we were attempting to put that behavior on extinction, he was in the bathroom screaming, holding his bladder to the point of where it actually was causing him physical pain for 2 hours. Extinction bursts can last a long time, everybody, but you just got to stick it out. If it's something where the child, you can leave the area and don't have to you don't have to be in there listening to your child scream, then maybe put in headphones. Headphones have helped me in the past by listening to music. And I know that sounds bad, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. I know a lot of people try to use it's an extinction process for that crying out at night. That's pretty much the same thing. And I don't endorse crying it out. I'm just using it as an example. So the extinction burst for that would be their child has been screaming in their bed for 2 hours or however long. And to make sure that you don't give in by going into the room, that's when I would say try on those headphones, listen to music. Spontaneous recovery would occur. So after a while, the behavior, if you're like, oh, it's finally over, and then all of a sudden one day they wake up in the middle of the night, start screaming for an hour, that would be a spontaneous recovery. And if you give in and go into the room and you know that they're safe, then that behavior is just going to keep climbing again. So make sure you follow through with your procedures. I know that was a lot. Sorry, guys. Another thing that I want to remind everybody about is negative and positive. And whether you're talking about punishment or you're talking about reinforcement, it is not good versus bad. It is minus or add, or addition, adding or subtracting, remove, and add. That's literally all it is. Punishment, one thing to keep in mind about punishment, and even with extinction, you could potentially see aggressive behavior during a punishment procedure. So, but let's say you're trying to block an escape. By blocking the escape, the child could start smacking you. So you're blocking the door from escape, and they just start smacking you around. That could happen. Or if you put them in timeout, they could start throwing things because they don't want to go to timeout. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is both of these have the potential. It is not, again, 100% assured that you're going to see aggression. I just like to make sure everybody knows there's a potential for it. And the last thing let me take that back. There's 2 more things on here. One more thing, and I kind of bolded this one. Do not model aggressive behavior for your child. Do your best, as I said, to remain calm but firm. You can still be firm and get your point across without losing your temper, or smacking out of anger. Again, when you're using punishment, you always want to make sure it is not personal. So by modeling aggression when you're angry, you're showing the child that it's okay to hit somebody when you're angry. It's okay to scream at somebody when you're angry. You don't want to be that model. Children with autism seem to pick up on those models a lot more. So just make sure you aren't modeling something you don't want to see in the future. I saw one of the posts from a board that I follow. This is, if you wouldn't want your child to do this in their future boss's office, you shouldn't engage in that behavior either, because they could model it. And last but not least, I want you guys to remember to reinforce appropriate behavior. So whenever you see your child engaging in behavior you like, if they like praise, give them tickles, give them hugs. They're doing something that you like and you want to see. If you don't make sure that there is plentiful reinforcement for appropriate behavior, you could actually put that behavior on extinction. And we don't want, you don't want to put that appropriate behavior on extinction. So make sure, whether it's giving high fives or whatever, it is for your child, because every child's different. My son loves great jobs to the point where if I do something he likes, he reinforces my behavior by giving me verbal praise. So eventually the child becomes the teacher. Everybody, it happens. And he's only 4. So as always, I've included my helpful links. Now today, I tried to keep it fun. This one is one of my favorite clips from The Big Bang Theory, where they talk about negative reinforcement versus positive punishment. And watch it and see if you can point out a few things after watching this training. Or if you want, go back to the previous training and about punishment versus reinforcement and see if you can find anything. There's also a YouTube clip from the Khan Academy, which I really like them, explaining positive punishment versus negative punishment. And finally, this video is from an autism center that they do a word of the day in interviews. And this one is interviewing a BCBA on what extinction is. So I really recommend those. They're really great videos. They're not horribly long. I mean, they're probably shorter than this video. So, and it's a little less of me talking. So isn't that always great? So as always, while I wrap up, I encourage you guys to like my page, to share this video, to leave comments. Let me know what you guys want to hear about. Do you even want to hear about differential reinforcement next week? Do you want to hear about something totally different? Did you like my previous videos? Let me know. I need feedback. So let me know. I'm on Facebook and YouTube, and I'm actually, if you guys want, I may start a Twitter account for Ditto Remote Coaching Services. I just got a t-shirt made today, or the other day, so I'm excited for that. So just let me know what you guys want, what you think, and until next time, you guys have a fantastic week. Bye.